Good morning. Sri TCM Sundaram Garu, Sri Parshuram Paka Garu, Sri Prasanna Tantri Garu, Sri Aditya Kovalekar Garu, Sri Krishna Bhaskar Garu, and also our Principal Secretary Energy, Sri Navin Mittal Garu, and our Secretary Planning, Sri Buddha Prakash Garu, and our CMD SPDCL Musharraf Garu, and other distinguished guests. మీ అందరికి కూడా నమస్కారం. As you all know, we have recently announced Telangana Rising 2047. It is not just a document. It's our pledge to the future. We have set an ambitious target to transform Telangana into a $3 trillion economy by 2047. I want to ground us in the numbers. Today, Telangana's economy is approximately $185 billion economy. To reach $3 trillion economy by 2047, we need to grow roughly 16-fold in just 22 years. Mathematically, this requires a compound annual growth rate of 13.5% in dollar terms, roughly 17 to 18% in rupee terms, accounting for currency depreciation. To put this in historical context, no major Indian state has sustained that level of dollar growth for 2 straight decades. Even during India's best growth phases, states like Gujarat or Karnataka average 11 to 12% nominal growth over long periods. We are attempting to do something unprecedented in Indian economic history. Business as usual growth of 10% also gets us to maybe $1 trillion or $1.2 trillion, not just not $3 trillion. The gap between $1 trillion and $3 trillion is what economists call the productivity gap. And filling that gap is the sole purpose of this pen. But numbers are easy to write on paper. The real question is, the question that keeps me wondering is how. We cannot reach a $3 trillion economy simply by working harder. We cannot get there just by building more roads or constructing more buildings. Though we will do that too, to reach this exponential growth, we need to change the fundamental equation of our economy. The equation is simple. Capital plus innovation equals productivity. I once again repeat, the capital plus innovation equals productivity. Capital plus innovation equals productivity. And productivity is the only sustainable way to raise the wages and dignity of the common citizen in Telangana. For decades, government in India have viewed themselves as regulators. We focused on permissions, licenses, and fines. We patted ourselves on the back for improving the ease of doing business. But the world has changed. In the era of deep tech, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing, ease of doing business is just a baseline. It is the minimum requirement now. If we want to be the innovation capital of Asia, we must move from ease of doing business to ease of innovating. We must move from just clearing files to creating ecosystem. Our vision document outlines a spatial strategy: cure, urban, pure, peri-urban, and rare, rural. We have the plan, we have the talent, but innovation is expensive. And more importantly, innovation is risky also. Banks love safety, but innovation requires failures. History tells us that the biggest breakthroughs from the internet to space travel happened because someone was willing to make a high-risk idea for 10 years before it made a single rupee of profit. So the challenge for this panel today is to tell us, how do we unlock that capital? As we as a state are ready to evolve, we are ready to move from being just a regulator to being a catalyst, a partner that shares the risk to reap the rewards for our people. I am here today not just to speak, but listen. We have a brilliant panel of innovators, investors, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. We want to get straight to the heart of the matter with 3 specific questions. Number one, the productivity versus jobs. Paradox: there is a fear that higher productivity equates to automation and job losses. How can we hope to address it? What do you really think is the role of the state in encouraging innovation? Should we, often caricatured as a slow-moving behemoth, keep up to encouraging true innovation? Or should we be involved? We talk about, number 3, we talk about artificial intelligence and deep tech, often in the context of software. But the vision document emphasizes the rare rural zone. My question is, how do we ensure that deep tech doesn't just stay in Cyberabad? How do we incentivize capital to solve boring problems like increasing the productivity of a weaver in Warangal, or a farmer in Nizamabad or in Khammam, etc., etc. So friends, let us get started. And gentlemen, I request all of you to put all your heart and soul in this session and give us your valuable ideas and suggestions. And also I thank you once again for coming all the way from all of the, not only from the states, different states of this country, even from all over the world, for, making it a grand, successful event of Telangana Rising 2047 Vision Document Release Function. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot, sir, for your speech. It was very illuminating and set the context rightly, that how does deep tech not just stay inside and solve real problems. So now I will kind of ask questions to all the panelists, but let me just be a bit elaborate on what the context of the whole thing was. So as I said earlier that, you know, we and also Honorable Deputy CM mentioned that when we began this exercise, we learned that if things stay as they are, then Telangana will basically reach $1.2 trillion by 2047. So quite far from its aspiration of 3. And so we realized that the only way it can reach 3 trillion is by improving productivity and by making sustained investments. So sustained investments in particular means attracting FDI. So events like these serve a great purpose. And sustained innovation or productivity will come from innovation. So we have outlined a series of initiatives to foster innovation. One of them is called the Telangana Scientific Return Program, where what we are proposing is that Telangana offers outsized rewards, that is strong monetary rewards to superstar scientists. So scientists who are leading in, say, AI, computer vision, quantum computing, all of these fields, which are the fields for the future, we give them steep rewards and lure them back to Telangana. So this was, and then we have outlined several other initiatives in that chapter that you will see in the Telangana vision document. But then I would first like to get the perspective of Shri Krishna Bhaskar as a policy maker. So, you know, he is someone who, as an engineer, understands the technology very well, as an economist, understands incentives very well, and as a bureaucrat, understands the challenges very well. So I thought I would begin by asking him, how does he view the whole exercise, what we have done or attempted to do in proposing how Telangana will become, as sir said, the hub of global or Asia's hub of innovation, what he sees as the practical challenges and what he sees as the, not just challenges, but opportunities. Over to you.
Thanks, Aditya. I hope I'm audible. So the idea is essentially, we've set ourselves, thank you sir, we've set ourselves a goal which is, frankly speaking, unprecedented in economic history, and I believe it has been done after a lot of cogitation on this respect. And the analogy which comes to mind when I think of this is, back in the early 60s, and in fact late 50s, when the USSR beat the US in the rocket race and launched Sputnik, there was a lot of despondency. That very term, which is very, I think it's best translated in the Urdu term mayusi, on all of America, that the Soviets had actually beaten us in the space race. There's nothing left for us there. At that point of time, John F. Kennedy came up with a very mission which sounded extremely outlandish and impossible. I think it was back in 1961, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely the early 60s, 60 or 61, just after he took over as president. When the Soviets beat the Americans and the entire world was talking about the technological superiority of the USSR vis-a-vis the US, he said something audacious which no one was prepared for. He said, by the end of this decade, we'll put a man on the moon. And he was ridiculed in the American media for it. And it wasn't deemed possible. But the sheer force of that public pronouncement and the sheer passion and the aggression behind setting a goal for the nation as a whole got all of them together. And I still remember there were people like Werner von Braun, he was originally a Nazi, a German scientist, who built their rockets, the Saturn rockets. All of these people heard of this vision and became even more passionate and motivated than they originally were. And NASA, which until then never used to get a lot of funding, and which was never a big agency, captured the American imagination. So there are some things in life you can create or you can will by making them publicly available in the mind space of every citizen. And they may not happen otherwise. And in my sense, this $3 trillion goal is an extremely ambitious goal. Forget about your annualized growth rate of 13-14%. If you take into account your rupee depreciation, you're looking at 17-18%. And this is year on year for 22 years. It's a very, very, very ambitious goal. But the thing is, if you aim at that sort of galaxy, you will be able to get through some sort of critical mass, which will take you to places which you haven't otherwise been taken. So I believe, in terms of a stretch goal, this is like a clarion call to the entire state, its network of innovators, entrepreneurs, policy makers, to try to figure out what is it exactly, what it is the constraint which prevents us going there. I'll just add to that, you asked me to talk about challenges. I think the challenges, our Honorable Deputy CM has stated very clearly. We cannot get there by building more stadia, we cannot get there by building more roads. That will at best take us to 1 trillion, and even that is in doubt. Because after a point you have diminishing returns. The idea is, and as both Aditya and Prasanna have very eloquently argued in their own document, our vision document which will be released today. The idea is you need to increase your own productivity. That secret sauce which allows people to provide more innovation and more output per hour, per capita. And for that, there is no way out but to actively encourage the best in the world to come, set up shop here, create new ideas, create new products, and somehow create an innovation ecosystem. Just like John F. Kennedy, by making a public pronouncement of making a man on the moon, somehow made it happen. We need to, keeping such a stretch goal, need to make this happen just by making all of us conscious and utilizing all of our bandwidth to ensuring that we don't just do our best, but we have the context to do our best. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Krishna, for that very eloquent answer. And it was great to hear the story of NASA and sending a man to the moon, because, you know, it was such an audacious investment back then that nobody gave it any chance of success. And I mean, to be a bit self-serving, but Prasanna and I wrote an op-ed in Times of India, I think a few months ago, about investments in these type of technologies, be it space technology or defense technologies. And they have what Prasanna will elaborate on as a multiplier, which is one additional job, how many additional jobs they create. And in such investments into innovation have an enormously high multiplier. And why these things are very important is around 1960s or 70s, there were people who had made, very smart people, I don't want to belittle them in any way, who had made pronouncements saying that the USSR will overtake the US by 1985, 1990. Ironically, it collapsed before that. So the creative, what was special about the US was that a bunch of creative people got together, bunch of people, aspirational people got together and ideated over things and created fascinating wonders, which is what Telangana aspires to do, is my, from all the initiatives I have learned from the political leadership. So I would now though ask Prasanna to, since he is, he has thought a great deal about these issues and has also has led the drafting of the vision document that will be released later today, of how he views the whole importance of innovation in Telangana's economy, why it is the basis of the 3 trillion chapter, and productivity. Yeah, and also about financing innovation. You know, it's one thing is I have been very silent or conveniently ignored how to finance all of these ambitious initiatives. So Prasanna will probably also talk a bit about that. No, not good.
Thanks, Aditya. Thanks for the opportunity. As Honorable Deputy CM mentioned, the tagline for me, sir, was investment plus productivity. We've been dying to hear this from a policymaker, and we are so glad that policymakers are talking about productivity. When Mr. KB speaks, I usually go with the notes. Unfortunately, I don't have notes today. The insights coming in, I don't have much to add. But except that, innovation is not a luxury; it's a necessity for growth. We have to understand when we get into debates about growth. Again, I'm an academic, and I'll go back to first principles and not much of practice. What is growth? Growth is producing more from same level of resources, or taking less resources to produce the same thing. That's growth. There's nothing else to grow. That's growth. Repeatedly doing it again and again. There is nothing else growth. Now, when you read newspapers every day, you always, yeah, I do understand that, their fascination about demand, consumption, and all of that. That is for a day-to-day kind of a setting. Day-to-day it's about demand, because assumption is you have capacity, and if you go in demand, and there will be, production. But when you talk about 25 years, it's not about demand. It's about ability to produce. Your lens has to be very different when you talk about 25 years versus next 2 quarters. When you talk about 8.2% this quarter, or what should RBI do, that lens is very different than when you're talking about here, you're talking about growing the productive capacity. It's not about, there is enough productive capacity and you just go and consume and economy will grow. That's the bigger lens that one has to have. Now, when it comes to theory, how do you grow? Until again, since Mr. KB talked about 1960s, until then we did not have a theory of growth. When Robert Solow came about and said, look, how do you grow? The way you grow, he said, look, there are 2 ways, the intermediate growth and the eventual growth. Intermediate growth is you invest. You have capital, and as you invest, you build all the capital equipment, and then you produce more from, because you save and you invest, you produce more. You build infrastructure, you build machinery, use those machinery. That's the first stage. Now, the good news is it leads to growth. The bad news is it has an expiry date. Now, what's the expiry date? Two constraints there. One constraint, as you build more and more capital, additional returns become diminishing. You will have lower returns. Higher the capital, lower is that's the problem. And the second problem is that you need more and more savings. Where is that savings going to come from? You can't ask people not to eat. China went to the extent of 50% savings. Can you make it happen and Mr. KB has amazing insights as to why it is. I'll not bring it up here. But they did go to 50% savings. It's unprecedented. Where are you going to get? So these 2 constraints. And the third is depreciation. As you build more machines, more roads, you need more resources to maintain. It's not that US doesn't save. US does save 17%. But whatever they save is required to maintain their assets. So this will hit a wall. This will hit a wall. We have not hit a wall. Telangana do that also. We are nowhere close to that. But that will then what is that? That will lead to eventual growth, sustainable growth for a long period of time. And Romer came with an answer. It's research, innovation. In Solow's model, productivity is sort of given. It comes from God. There is no, how does productivity happen? It comes. There's no answer. Romer came out with an answer because there was a debate that time that everybody will eventually become rich. Because if capital, you invest, everyone will rich. Then they observed some countries are not becoming rich. Africa is, was not becoming rich. China was not becoming rich. India that time was not becoming rich. This Romer's model is about you have to create this. It's not God-given. Productivity is not given. Some policymakers, some investors, inventors will have to create it so that people like us can talk about it. We don't do much, right? So that's the whole idea, theory behind all this thinking, that eventually what will lead sustainable growth is invention. And invention need not be original. You can copy. The problem with Industrial Revolution and UK and those, they had to do original stuff. China and other countries which grow at 10%, they could do this by imitating. So start with imitating and then start original stuff. So this is the broad philosophy that we have suggested, and glad that the government is talking that language. So I'll stop here and we can.
Yeah, thank you, Prasanna, for that answer. Yes, it's really very heartening to hear the policymakers buy into that language and speak that language. You feel that at least as academics, we feel that what we do, we are in our silos and probably nobody cares. And then you see the political establishment, the bureaucrats really appreciate this importance of innovation. And now coming to the point that, that Prasanna mentioned, that we have to attract the best, like growth is not God-given. People have to create things. And we are in that way very lucky to have Parshuram, who actually has created something. I mean, at some level, Prasanna and I have been living in the world of ideas only, whereas Parshuram has been getting his hands dirty for the past, I think, many years. And he is a prototype of the type of people we want to lure back. So he was in the US. He was working, had a successful professional career, but what he may explain best the reasons why he came back to Telangana, but he did. And not only did he come back to work in a professional job, but he started creating things. So I would like to invite Parshuram to give share his experiences, wherein I would particularly ask him also to focus on, challenges are important, but where he sees the comparative advantage of Telangana over, say, the US ecosystem, because we often hear of what the challenges here are, but I'm sure there are strengths. So we would also like to hear about some strengths, some positives, and how we can reinforce them.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you for the opportunity, Honorable Deputy CM Garu and the esteemed panel. I hope I'm audible. Yeah. So the panel and the government has been talking about the policy, right? So the policy is basically established to address a lot of challenges in the innovation, and Deputy CM Garu has rightly put, the capital plus innovation is productivity. And both are important, the capital and the innovation, but with respect to both, I would say for a startup like us, for an innovator, there are a lot of challenges, and I would like to tell you how we have navigated these challenges and how the policy is going to help navigate this for the future entrepreneurs. When we started off Graviton in the year 2018 and 19, I did an intense research and realized that there were no electric vehicle component manufacturers or the core critical component manufacturing companies in India. And my idea was to develop everything in India so that our vehicles can handle any terrain, that is cities or rural or any part of the country. And what I understood is for that to happen, we need to have full control over the supply chain. And we don't have the control over that supply chain, and we wanted to exactly build that. So we have taken a very hardship of developing this entire core tech here in India, in Telangana. And what we have developed is a platform. Instead of making one particular look like motorcycle or a scooter, what we have developed is a platform, the tech platform, the core tech platform, with which you can make any kind of, robots. And our first product happens to be a robot on wheels, I say. Why I say robot? Because that's the future, and for any robot, the critical components are very similar to an EV. And coming to the challenges, when I came back to India from US, I assumed that I can go to universities and collaborate with universities to develop these technologies. But what I realized was, unlike US, where the inception of the new tech happens in the university labs, which are funded by either government or the companies or the universities itself. And we don't have that here, which is why you see a lot of new techs coming out of US specifically, and a lot of our engineers, the talent pool from India, the potential people, are traveling to different countries for education and going on to contribute significantly in the tech world. And what I understood was it's not the same case in India. It's completely the reverse. The companies has to develop their own tech. And I primarily believe that's because we were, as a country, more focused on the service and service economy. And we did not focus much on the innovation and the manufacturing or the ecosystem building around it. Probably that could be one of the reasons I felt. And this was one of the big challenge because we did not find, the first challenge is finding the talent pool who has expertise in the core component that includes the motors, the traction motors, the power electronics, or the battery systems. That was the one challenge, and the second challenge was the mindset itself. Because I would say our investment VC ecosystem is used to, for the software world, where the equations are very different when compared to the hardware world, where the gestation period is very long. The returns would come after a very long time. It's not instantaneous. And the mindset was that people, when I pitched this idea that we will be developing everything here, the biggest, the first people were the prospective investors who said, hey, why don't you just do the assembly, bring products or components from somewhere else and assemble them. That was a big challenge I had, that is assembly versus development. So I had to, the entire team had to go above and beyond to convince the potential investors as well as build the team who has this mindset of development, who has the patience to develop. And the third challenge was the investment capital itself, because as I said, our capital was more used, or the VCs were more used towards the software world. And they were asking me, why are you taking so much time to come to the market? Why are you not there in the market yet? And they used to suggest me to just start selling, bring it from wherever I can. But we had to take this hard stance that, okay, we will develop it here. And fortunately, similar mindset investors we could find in India and in other countries. And now that we are producing and selling as well. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Parshuram, for that eloquent answer. I think he was too humble to mention, or if he did, I missed it, that he has a Asia Book of record for his vehicle to do a 5,400 kilometers journey without recharge, right?
Yeah, without stopping for charging, non-stop riding. The riders were changing, but it's the same vehicle. So within 4.5 days, we did nearly 4,000 kilometers. And for that, we had to establish temporary swap stations throughout the country. And that was to demonstrate that EVs can be a real alternative and to establish confidence on our technology.
Yeah. So, and one thing you mentioned, Parshuram, that really I think hit the nail on the head, which is that when you came and tried to collaborate with the universities in India to bring technology or develop technology, you hit a dead end. This is exactly where, again, it's a bit self-serving because Prasanna and I came up with this proposal, but we are really wanting to strengthen this exactly or solve this bottleneck by giving incentives to bring the best minds and host them in universities. And Telangana or Hyderabad has a lot of excellent institutions. Like many people don't know that there is an ISI Hyderabad, Indian Statistical Institute Hyderabad. So we have the opportunity to host these leading scholars, and that hopefully in future people like Parshuram will not have to struggle finding people to collaborate within universities and develop technologies. And you know, this is a standard model in the US, where professors raise grants through industry, build something that is useful, and then if something works, it's scaled up. So it would be a very healthy ecosystem. Let me throw one next question to both Prasanna and KB. I'll let Prasanna go first. to give a somewhat of an academic view, and then I will let KB answer from a policymaker's perspective. But you know, when we propose things like go for innovation, go for the best minds, create the best talent, like often the question comes is, what about inequality? Like if you look at say all of these fields, the technology, these are what are called as winner takes all. That means only a few who are at the lead, who lead these technologies get a lot of returns, and rest of the people are left behind. And why should we as a country, as a society, encourage such type of changes in the society? That is often a question. Now, I have my views about why this is a good thing, but I will not, I'll reserve my views. I'll ask Prasanna and then KB to elaborate on why so it is important for the economy and why it is important also from a policymaker's perspective. Prasanna first, thanks.
Yeah. On the jobs front, let's look at some facts. You have to understand that, broadly, there are all sectors of the economy can be classified into two categories, tradable and non-tradable. Now, what is this tradable sector? Like software, pharma, where everybody, competition is global. There are only two ways you can win there. Either become more efficient or become cheap. There's no other way. There is no other, or you can restrict competition, put in barriers, and then, then it becomes a zero-sum game, who wins like we used to do before. Now, tradable sector is the one where you have to compete. The best people will have to compete. The model that, that seems to have worked is there you go up the value chain. There you do the best possible work. Be at the front end there. Now, what it does is, it generates a lot of income, wealth inside the country. Because now the rest of the people can, usually, 2/3 of the population, Aditya, you know this, works in non-tradable sectors. Now, what are these non-tradable sectors? Doctors, teachers, your yoga instructor, hairstylist, driver, kirana, all of these are non-tradable sectors. Now, the good news about non-tradable sector is, the income of these people in the non-tradable sector does not just depend on their productivity. It depends on the income of their consumers. Go to a village and see your barber in a village. That guy may be whatever skill level they may have, the level of income they make, there is a limit to the income that they make. Whereas your hairstylist here can make much, much more, having much lesser skills. I've written about it. I was in Darjeeling recently. The driver was super skilled. He could literally fly the car, in that, Darjeeling terrain, if you remember. The amount of salary the driver makes, 8,000 rupees, plus some tips, 10,000 rupees. And with all respect to drivers here in Hyderabad, they are good, they're very good, but not the level of skill that Northeast drivers have. But they earn 4 times of that, plus they do Swiggy and Zomato and all of that. Where is it coming from? Not necessarily productivity, it's the income entrepreneurs and investors in Hyderabad who created this kind of income. So this is unfortunately, if you want to create income for the masses, the only sustainable way is to have this go up in the competitive sector. If you're lower in the competitive sector, what will happen is income of the best people itself will be lower, and the rest of them will have even lower income. Inequality will be there. Inequality will not go away. Everybody will have low income. So that's the whole philosophy. There is no other option than to create jobs at the very high end so that the low end jobs income goes up. It's actually anti-inequality. Your low income people will earn more. In fact, you not getting a maid is a good thing. As an economist, my wife may not agree with me, but as an economist, I'll tell you, you not finding a maid, you not finding somebody is a good thing. It shows things are doing better. That means you have to pay a lot to those people. If you find 10 people, willing to massage you, that's a bad thing, right? That happens when overall income goes up. So that is the model. Mr. KB can elaborate more, but that's the broad model.
So, if I take the economist reasoning a bit further, a paradox or an unfortunate finding is if I have a maid for a while, I must be overpaying that person, because if that person deserved more, they would have got it elsewhere. So that is an unfortunate way of how economists reason, but I agree with Prasanna's logic. So I'll let now KB go for the same.
I really say that in government, we have serious issue with that line of thought. Because we do compare apples to oranges and oranges to pineapples all the time, but we try to do it in some sort of fashion which I believe is acceptable. We cannot ever compare apples to just apples. But I'll just come to your point here. I really loved Prasanna's point about the idea of getting non-tradable jobs into an economy, because in the long term, that's where you'll get your masses to grow. And I just want to add on it. That's a great point. Let us presume you've succeeded there. What next? My sense is you still have constraints. The first constraint is, how are you creating jobs? That he's talked about, and they've really, I would request everyone in this room to read their economic modeling. I'm very proud to say that these two gentlemen have carried out an analysis for her which has not been there in any other state's vision document. They've just put numbers there. These two people have worked the numbers and they've let us know how difficult it is. So we know right at the outset, so it's a challenging task. I'll come to the other part now, which is what do you do? How do you create these jobs? Now I have a point here. Let's say you have an absolutely brilliant technology which comes up, let us say Perplexity. Arvind Srinivas comes to Hyderabad, he sets up Perplexity, and he creates thousands of jobs, and like you said, you have tradable and non-tradable. You create an entire ecosystem, people's incomes go up. Now let us say Perplexity then for some reason goes bankrupt. What happens then? The idea is the way government has looked at it so far is, let us bail out Perplexity. You know, too big to fail. This is exactly what happened with Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. Of course, they let Lehman Brothers fail, but back in 2009, they allowed these companies to fail. Now, my sense is this is not a model which will work any longer. Number one, governments do not have the financial heft to allow these too big to fail companies to survive. There's another model which I think has worked much better, which is the Swedish model. The Swedish model is, let the job die, but let the employee survive. So if a company folds, let the company fold, but at government expense, the employee will be retrained for employment elsewhere. So this way you're ensuring your economy is resilient, your economy is robust, and if I may use a term, it's even anti-fragile because you're allowing companies to fail. It's a bit arresting that in the supposedly most advanced economy of the world, the US, powerful firms were able to lobby the Treasury Department. Lehman Brothers went under, but Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are surviving today essentially because they went and lobbied for a bailout and they got the bailout. The era of bailouts is gone. And if you want to move beyond bailouts, you have to look at protecting people through a sort of retraining mechanism and skilling mechanism, which Sweden does a lot. And it's a very eloquent way of putting it. Let's protect the worker, not the job. Let the job go. Let the job come up somewhere else. But the family should be protected. And I think that's the way to go. And I think that could be a possible rubric if you want to look at future growth and jobs together.
Thank you, KB, for that answer. Actually, and this is a very important point. I think because now there are already talks about the whole AI valuations being a bubble. And then all the stuff that, if you have been following news, how OpenAI investing in NVIDIA investing in OpenAI, we may actually in the US be seeing exactly this point of where the government in the past had to bail out banks. Now even the tech companies may be too big to fail. If Google fails tomorrow, I hope it will not, but I'm just saying as an example that it can have catastrophic consequences. So it's a very timely point that you raised. You want to add on it?
I would let you know that our Deputy CM actually started his career in banking. And there's a story which he keeps telling us. He says, if you borrow 1 lakh and don't return it, it's your problem. If you borrow 100 crores and don't return it, it's the bank's problem. So I think we should stop, which he keeps mentioning in meetings. I think we should stop ourselves from reaching that stage by some means possible.
That's a great point. And I have seen the Deputy CM also make some very insightful observations like these on credit. Now I can see where these insights were coming from. So when we were in a meeting, Prasanna and I were shocked by positively shocked by one of the things he said about microfinance. And now I can see where his insights were coming from. Anyway, so moving on, I have one more question to KB, and then we can take questions from the audience if there are any. So there are, all these theses we have built around innovation, that there are lots of calls and also some initiatives about the state acting as a venture capital. So state investing in some of these companies. Now, the counterpoint to that is that the state does not have the ability to pick winners. So the state should not be doing this. That is another view. I wanted to know what he feels like and what is the general policymaker's perspective on a proposal like this. And then I would actually also ask Prasanna if he has any view on this.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. I mean, this is something, now we actually come down to nuts and bolts of what the Deputy CM and the Finance Department do, or the Planning Department deal with on a daily basis. Now, the thing is, it's great, it's a great idea in practice, so I'm sorry, in principle for the state to be involved in venture capital. And by the way, it's been done all across. I think Abhijit Banerjee has written very eloquently about the SIBR, the small business, independent business something, SIBR of, you know, companies like I think Symantec and I think one more very, very big companies have actually come from US government handouts in the form of incentives. They've started there. And you don't need to look that far. The entire pharma network of Hyderabad is originally built on the network laid down by IDPL. People like Dr. Reddy's and many other companies have come out from the network of both innovation, knowledge and capital, which was nurtured by IDPL. So I would have you know this, riddle me this. If government is really so inefficient, if government really can't get things done, and if government needs to step out of the way to get real productivity and innovation, I want to ask the audience a general answer. Who started Silicon Valley? I'm just a general answer. If anybody can answer, I'll be very happy. Who's the main reason for Silicon Valley starting? Anybody can venture a guess? This is a lady called Mariana Mazzucato, who's written really fantastically about this. Silicon Valley was not started by Shockley, by William Shockley, or for that matter, the Traitorous Eight, or the Intel. It was started through a government initiative which funded the original innovations into understanding how you could route silica chips to actually store more. And that's really fantastic. Go a little further, you'll see that there's a history of government actually funding individuals who've gone on to make very big contributions. I talked about SIBR. The other example I want to talk about is, there is one country in the world which is now called a startup nation. That's Israel. Like the per capita amount of startups in Israel is far more than I think most other countries around. And it started because in the 90s they came up with a concept called Yozma. You can even look it up right now, YOZMA. To be sure, just before this session I googled it as well. The Yozma is a situation where when an entrepreneur puts up an innovative deep tech, or you say fundamental sort of innovation, the state steps in. The state only gets a license fee or a registration fee if he is successful. But if the entrepreneur fails, the state takes up to 40 or 50% of his loss. A significant amount. I'll have to check how much amount. The moment you do that, you have a lot more people like Parshuram. Like he has been talking he made a very great point about how the ecosystems are different here. How some walls just stop. I'm very sure that he wouldn't have said this if somebody, when he started his journey, had told him, listen, you do what you want, and if it fails, we'll take half the loss. This is what they did in Israel, and today it's really the startup nation of the world. So I do believe there are valid and understandable models that the government can step in to be a venture capitalist, but it can't be a venture capitalist in the usual sense. The usual sense of being a Vinod Khosla or a Masayoshi Son does not work here, because there are certain limits to what government can be seen to. And my last point here, I see this is a very popular session. There is only standing room, my apologies. My last point here is we do have an absolutely fantastic example in the Indian Innovation Network itself. One of the biggest venture capitalists and one of the most successful venture capitalists in per ROI return terms, in per capita ROI return terms, is the innovation fund set up by IIT Madras, where they started funding their own startups about, I think, 5-7 years ago. The current director, Professor Kamakoti, is behind it. Somebody was telling me that that fund itself is worth more than 1,000 crores today. It must have started at 10, 15 crores, 20 crores max. That's all the IITs give. Trust me, they're very, bahut kanjoos log hai. They will not give you more than that. And it's gone into 1,000 crores, more than 1,000 crores. There is a model available for us if you want to look at venture capital. And if you look at Yozma or the SIBR, I think we have great pointers.
Great. That's a wonderful answer. Actually, before we go to Prasanna, I have one question for Parshuram. as someone from the other side, manufacturing side, do you think that your main challenge is financial capital or human capital? What would be your biggest bottleneck? What was your biggest bottleneck when you started?
It's actually both. So
But
as I said
which was
earlier-
bigger? There must be some.
What's that?
Which was bigger? There must be one.
So I say it's human capital because when we were scouting for people who has understanding of the core technology to develop it here, we couldn't find people. And I was wondering why is it, but a lot of Indians going to different countries and doing great. And that's where I realized that, in our universities, we don't have this nurturing of innovation happening, or someone incentivizing, or someone saying that, okay, this is the fund you can go and innovate within the universities. Probably that's the reason the skill set coming out of our engineering colleges were not to that point where we could leverage their skills. Okay. And the other big challenge was definitely the capital. As I said, for the core engineering, it is still a challenge because the gestation period is very high. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So, yeah, I think we are running out of time probably, so I'll ask Prasanna just to elaborate on what Krishna Bhaskar was saying about we have some excellent models of financing innovation through state support. How do you feel about that? And yeah, you didn't elaborate on your ideas of financing innovation, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this. Just one line on what Honorable Deputy CM asked, like on these non-tradables, how do you create these jobs? Sir, the answer is education. Our education, what's happening is a lot of people are entering into degrees without thinking whether they are useful or not. Like during our time, all of us would go into BA, BCom, BSc. Now it's become engineering. So our education system, and as you know, we have proposed, has to think about culture, tourism. These are very valuable jobs, local jobs. People have to be trained on. Not everybody needs to be a postgraduate. Not everybody needs to have a PhD. Or we have to think about hands and getting hands dirty kind of jobs, and then you can graduate. Of course, there should be a way to graduate. After that, you want to study, you study and go up. So focus should be on that. And finally, on as an academic, you have to be a bit more, Mr. K, you have to be skeptical of our government also. And this is why I said you should take notes when he speaks. I think government, there should be one principle though. While I appreciate a lot of fundamental things have come from government, like World War led to a lot of innovation, including the internet. But there needs to be one principle that when the government intervenes, there should be some market failure. That's where the government should come in. Now, a lot of times governments intervene without defining what the market failure is. If you don't define what the market failure is, and if you start doing things which markets can do better, then it's, you can go on a list where things have been a disasters also. So I think there is a market, in financing innovation, I agree. Markets do not, they do not have that long-term vision. You don't have, of course, the first attempt should be to develop those markets because government capacity is also limited. One thing with due respect, governments don't earn anything. It's the people who earn. So it's that people, we have to have that sense also. So I don't want to be an advocate of an unlimited government. That is not, at least I don't stand for. Of course, markets fail. And where markets fail, in the interest of people, and governments will have to come in. And I absolutely agree that, it's too big to fail is a very big, the biggest threat to markets are big market players themselves. That's what we have, I totally agree. So it has to be a balance, understand market failures, government failures, both of that, and walk a tightrope. It's not easy. It's easy for us to sit here and talk. People like you are on the ground who execute. It's not going to be easy. But, that's what seems to have worked throughout the world. Thank you.
All right.
I would like to add one thing. Sorry.
Yes.
So as KB said, incentivizing the startups or telling them that we will take care of you. If a policy can be placed around that, as well as nurturing the young engineers in the universities itself, create a huge thing called brain drain, right? A lot of our potential guys were going out of the country and working elsewhere. And with this kind of confidence or the policies, definitely I could see that there will be a huge brain gain happening. And that would be great.
And inside
All right, firstly coming up is Mr. Prasanna Tantri. Give a big round of applause. From the finance team, ISB, give a big round of applause to him. We take pride in felicitating him and honoring him. The next name, can you write here?
just 1 second. Yeah.
Next is Mr. Parasuram Paka. After this, all right.
He's a CEO of Graviton. Graviton. Yeah. This was Parshur, but you already facilitated. Minister's
All right, next is Mr. Parasuram Paka. Give a big round of applause. CEO Graviton.
Then the Krishna. Yeah, okay, yeah. Deputy CM.
You want it. Just find out. Just Google. Wikipedia is fine. Full name? Full name? We have Mr. Aditya. We give a big round of applause. TI tag treasures of Telangana, the exquisite chef renowned for their intricate tie and dye weaving, embody the timeless skill of our artisans, complementing them the vibrant curial mass and handicraft in the traditional storytelling. Ladies and gentlemen, time to honor our Deputy Chief Minister of Telangana, Shri Mallu Bhatti Vikramarka garu. Gattiga chappalto, let's give a resounding applause to him, please. I think we can shower some more love and energy in the honor of the Deputy Chief Minister, Telangana, ladies and gentlemen. Minister of Finance, Vikramarka garu. Let us celebrate the GI recognized art forms and the master craftsmen who keep our traditions alive. With that, we're officially closing the first session in the Hall 4. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful and amazing audience. We look for a greater vision, the $3 trillion economy. Ladies and gentlemen, huge round of applause as we manifest it for 2047. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated and comfortable at your places.